Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective. This is a public affairs presentation of Florida Gateway College. My name is Mike McKee and my guest on the program today is Columbia County Sheriff Mark Hunter. We're going to talk about school safety, a bunch of other things that the Sheriff's Department is involved in. We'll do that when we come back. Don't go away.
Cancer may be tough, but we are tougher. We are the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Our game-changing research has led to the belief that the cures for cancer are in our blood. We are the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Beating cancer is in our blood.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. Mark Hunter is the Sheriff of Columbia County, and we're going to talk about some things at the Sheriff's Office. First of all, I believe this is your first time on the program. Welcome.
I believe so.
Welcome to the program. So tell us a little bit about the Sheriff's Office.
Well, it's something that I am very proud of. A little bit of numbers on it. We currently have 209 employees. We cover, Columbia County's interesting county. We have 797 square miles, about 58 miles of interstate that roll through on 75 and 28 going through I-10. So that's the reason we call us the gateway to Florida. About 70,000 is where we're at with our population. And each one of the deputies we put out there covers about 100 square miles on patrolling. We've done a real good job with our coverage areas that we do. When I first got elected, we looked at our coverage, how we were able to best serve the community, and we zoned the county out and put the deputies in there and left them in there for a more extended period of time to get to know the community, because that's what's important. And that's one of the biggest strengths of law enforcement, is having that trust and having that interaction with the citizens, because they'll see so much more than what we will just driving through the neighborhoods or rolling and patrolling, as we call it.
Let me ask you, I don't think people, or maybe new to the area, are unfamiliar. Columbia County goes to the Georgia line. I mean, when you look at a map of Columbia County,
we go from the Georgia line all the way to the Alachua County line. And a lot of people don't realize that's a good point. And we actually work with some of our Georgia partners or agencies, that because crime doesn't have any boundaries. And we're surrounded by some really good counties that we have a good relationship with our law enforcement community, with our business communities. And that's what makes us strong as a law enforcement entity, is partnering with other agencies. Because the other thing too is, us being a smaller rural county, we don't have all of the equipment and the technologies that these larger agencies can afford. And so that's a balance that we have to look at and prioritize our mission. And it's ever evolving. And a lot of times in law enforcement, we're playing catch up to the criminals. And there was a cartoon that I saw, a cartoon caption, where you have the criminal on one lane, and then you have the law enforcement guy on the other lane, and you got the starter pistol goes off. Well, in the law enforcement lane, there's all these hurdles that we have to get over in order to finish the race to catch the bad guy.
And you mentioned the fact that you've got interstates. How much of a challenge is that you're dealing with 70,000 or so? It's probably much larger than that. We probably don't know exactly the number of residents who live here, but you've got people that don't live here from other counties. You've got people that are from other countries. Mm-hmm. You've got, and I want to say, illegal drug trafficking may take place along I-75, I-10. Talk about that challenge, because that to me, I know you got the Highway Patrol out there that does a good job with traffic. You're in a different boat.
We have what's called our HIDA program, which is it's a high intensity drug trafficking program, where we actually partner with the feds, with the federal law enforcement, and there's a grant program that we actually get funding to be able to support operations on drug interdiction on the interstate. And where that's important, some of the folks maybe remember back when we had the pill mill crisis, where we had the opioid addictions, and the trafficking of the pills was just significant. And the governor at that time formed a task force, and we were able to utilize that program along. We dovetailed those two together, and really made a significant difference on shutting down those pill mill operations. And it was interesting to see the amount of trafficking that was going on. We had folks coming from as far as New Jersey that were coming down and headed South Florida.
They were doctor shopping, weren't they?
That's
they were
correct.
Looking for doctors who,
right.
or looking for pharmacies that were going to fill prescriptions that were maybe fraudulent.
Right, and we were one of the first agencies to actually arrest a doctor for operating a pill mill.
I remember that. That's been a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's been several years back, but good work, teamwork, with all of our state and federal partners, and the sheriff's office guys did a great job. I was very, very pleased with that investigation to be able to shut that down here locally.
What's the biggest challenge that the sheriff's office, I mean, is it the distance that deputies have to travel? What are your biggest challenges that you see that law enforcement in general?
Well, the recruitment and the retention of personnel. Law enforcement's a little bit different, and I've worked in several different professions in my life. I've been in the military, I've worked private sector, but in law enforcement, and I had an old sheriff told me this. He said it takes about 5 years to train a good deputy, and so when you have that revolving door, it makes it very problematic to get continuity of your operations that go on, and so being able to recruit, retain, and then have those trained and get them seasoned, as we call it in our profession, makes a significant difference. And that's what we've been able to work on over the last several years. Investing in our agency, and our having a good package there for the people to come to, that they don't have to worry, that they can support their families and have good training, and holding people accountable. That's one of the biggest things in law enforcement, is having community trust. And if you don't hire good people and retain those people in your rank and file, and having good leadership, that's one of the things that we worked on with our promotion system. We put together a very good system to where that we cross-pollinate. I encourage my guys when they come on to not just be a deputy, but get in there, get you a few years of working the road, and then go over to the detective side of the house so that you can see how that operates there, and then go back to the patrol side so that you've seen the whole picture, and then have some of them go up and work in the courthouse, and that way they see the aftermath of the cases, because it matters in state of our job and how that we actually affect people's lives, and cops or law enforcement are kind of a unique bird, and in that we have to be careful and guard against getting a callous attitude, and it's hard to do sometimes whenever you're dealing with the worst of the worst, day in and day out. But I've got an old saying that I use that I say, it's my 80-20 rule, and I guess this is a hunterism. 80% of the people in our community are good salt of the earth people. They just want to live and enjoy life, and they really don't need us other than seeing that patrol vehicle in their neighborhood, or feeling safe by having law enforcement there. But you got about 20% that are the folks that are constantly in the system, and then we're having to deal with them time and time again. And so you can kind of build an attitude up, and that's one of the things that we actually have discussion about it at the sheriff's office, is that when we're dealing with people, be respectful, be professional, because we're the calm in the storm. When bad things happen, we're there. So.
Well, and talk about this too. You mentioned challenges of seasoning a deputy. With all the shootings that take place where deputies and law enforcement are targets, has that made it even harder for you to recruit guys that want to possibly put their life on the line for a job?
Yeah, you know, a few years back, there was a lot of media attention on law enforcement, and I think that you had some of the folks that were a little bit misguided with their numbers, and whenever the numbers were actually washed out, it wasn't as it was portrayed in the media, and that's one of the things that really bothered me as the sheriff of our county. And knowing our agency and our relationship that we had with our community. Because let's face it, you know, when we have a significant incident that takes place, people want to know. And I think that as law enforcement, we have to be honest and we have to share those things with our community. And when we have a significant event, I reach out to some of our local people, our business people, and what I call monarchs in our community. And everybody understands how that works. We've got people that are respected in the community. And so if we make a mistake, and which is going to happen sometimes, we own it. And I'm not backing away from it. If something happens out there, then we need to say, yes, this happened. We're sorry that it happened. Here's what we've done to correct it, and we're going to move forward. Now, if we have to take disciplinary action or somebody can't stay with the sheriff's office anymore, then we're going to take those actions. But on the other side of that, when the deputies are out and the law enforcement are out and they do their job, and it's the right thing to do, even though it may not be, I guess you would say, in appearance that it wasn't the right thing to do. I'm going to stand by my guys and our law enforcement guys, but I'm going to hold them accountable, and I can assure you that we've had some in the sheriff's office that not everybody's going to work at the sheriff's office. I can assure you of that, because we have a very high standard, and I hold them accountable.
We're going to continue our conversation with Sheriff Mark Hunter. We'll talk about school safety in the wake of the year anniversary of the Parkland shooting in Florida, some changes that are being made on a local basis as well as at the sheriff's office. We'll do that when we come back. Don't go away.
There are amazing things to discover in the forest.
Toothless, time to go! What you picking up on, bud?
It's a whole hidden world of wonders. And the perfect place to spend time with family. What better place to let your imagination soar? Experience nature and create a memory you can share. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest or park near you.
Back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television, and also welcome to the listeners on WQHL and WCJX radios. We appreciate their tuning in to this program. My guest on the program is Sheriff Mark Hunter. He is the sheriff of Columbia County and has been for a number of years. We're just talking about some of the challenges that his department faces in this day and age of cell phone videos, and I mean, that's probably the worst thing that ever happened. I mean, in a good way, it's good, and in a bad way, it's bad because you can manipulate the way video is. But again, you're working through the challenges that your office faces on a daily basis, including school safety. And we're going through an anniversary of one of the deadliest shootings on a school campus. And I guess what I need to kind of understand is the state reacted, and now you're having to implement some things that are probably good. Some of them probably are more of a challenge to you. So let's talk about school safety here in Columbia County.
Well, I will say this. That was a horrific event that took place down there, and the sad thing about it is it's probably not going to be the last event. And so kudos to the legislature for what they did. They pushed the bill through in just a few weeks, a short period of time. They solicited a lot of information, but you know from dealing with the legislature over there, when you try to push something through of that magnitude in such a short period of time, there's going to be some gaps, and there's going to be some issues with that. The Sheriff's Association has worked very closely with the legislature. You know, the governor appointed Sheriff Galtieri, Bob Galtieri, as the chair for the Parkland Commission, and they did a stellar job on that investigation and developed a lot of findings. Of course, this was after the bill. Some of the things that came out of that bill were that, you know, we wanted to have a law enforcement officer at each campus, and that should be the optimal end state. However, when you start putting the numbers to that as far as funding of that, it's very problematic. And so when we try to come up with solutions, they came up with the Guardian program, and they also came up with the security guard format. So within that bill, they allowed for those options. The superintendent and we spoke whenever this was going through. Of course, we were working with the superintendents, and I attended a superintendent summit along with several other sheriffs with their collective body at the school superintendent's meeting, and we came up with a lot of ideas to help move forward with this. Up front, I will be honest, the Guardian program, I had a lot of concerns about that, along with our local, and I can't speak for the board, but I can speak for, you know, our conversations that we had, that we wanted to make sure that before we place somebody on a school campus, that there was a very good training program, and that we were doing the right thing. Ultimately, we wound up putting a school resource deputy in every school here in Columbia County. I'm very proud of that. I had been advocating to try to get more deputies at the elementary schools over the last several years, but it took an event for this to take place. With that said, trying to obtain the funding on that has been very problematic. This year, the legislature has gone back, and last year that bill was 7026. Senate Bill 7026 is the bill that actually went through for school safety. This year they've got 7030 that they're coming back in, and they're doing the fixes on that, along with some allocation of funding. We're looking at the Guardian program as a supplement to what we put in place last year. I think that there is a place for the Guardian program that could help supplement the resource deputies that are at the schools. But let me make sure that people understand my thought process with that. Having a dedicated law enforcement officer at that school, they have a different mindset than just a security guard or a guardian. They do a lot more than just be there to arrest people or to just be there as far as law enforcement presence. They're involved through this bill that went through. The requirements are they're involved in the risk assessments for all of the schools. They are the point person for law enforcement at each individual school, and that's important because they're there day in and day out. We dovetail that back with our patrol groups, and they actually go out for part of their training as they go visit each one of the schools. Our different shifts go out to familiarize themselves to where that if we did have an active shooter, that they're not getting there for the first time and having to negotiate all those obstacles and things. They're familiarized with it. This is just, you know, part of that whole process. Whenever the school board is, or that school is having to do an assessment on a child that may be at risk or have issues, the school resource deputy is now involved in that process, and we've been able to get the law to where that we can share information, because used to, you know, with HIPAA and with all the different restrictions on information sharing, after the Parkland event, we realized that can be very problematic, to where that if you have things in a silo and other people don't have situational awareness, bad things can happen.
Do you think that contributed a lot to the Parkland situation? Because I think they had this kid, they kind of knew that there were some issues with this person?
It could have helped. There's a lot of other factors, and from the Parkland report that came out, there were some failures. There were a lot of accomplishments or a lot of good things that happened, and everybody wants to focus in on one or two of the things that went wrong. I like to focus on the things that went right. You have to pay attention to what went wrong and fix those. But I can tell you the deputies that we have, they have a warrior mindset, and that's important, and we train that, and we make sure that, that these deputies understand that that's their job. Is if you have an active shooter, you're going in. And my policy has never been may or whatever. And I don't even think I have to have a policy for my people. They're that dedicated. And the thing, Mike, that people need to understand is you know, when you go back to the Sandy Hook, or you know, all of those previous shootings, we've evolved from that, where used to the deputies or the law enforcement would stage, get the special teams, and then they would go in. After those previous shootings, we learned that this is so volatile and happens so fast, you cannot wait. These events take place within 5 to 7 minutes. And so the longer that shooter is in there, or that person is active in there, the more lives that can be taken. So if you're out there at that school as a law enforcement and you hear active shooting going on, you go to it, and then you advise. And that's another part of it, is the communications. Some of the things that we're working on with the schools, and some things that the teachers may be able to have at their hand. And some of this stuff, it costs money. And so we're trying to balance out, you know, how can we, you know, put assets out there and get a good return on that. And there's, you know, the return is, of course, saving lives. And but it is a balancing act to do that.
Let me ask you, each of the schools in Columbia County have a school resource deputy.
That's correct.
And so they've kind of been hardened a little bit. The schools have been hardened just a little bit. Talk about that. I think we went and we shot some video. We're not going to show a lot of video, but I think we went to Eastside
Yes.
Elementary School, and so, but this is kind of what
Yes.
what they're talking about, where there's a single entry point.
Single point entry. This was one of the things that came out of this. But let me give kudos to our school board. This just didn't happen since the Parkland shooting. Our school board has been working on and along with us doing school safety plans. That's another thing that came out of here. Each one of those school resource deputies is part of developing that school safety plan. They're working hand in hand with the principals,
and they know the school better than anybody.
And that's the other take. They look at it from a different perspective, as far as, you know, how's the school going to get burglarized? How could somebody be able to get in here, you know, easier? So they're looking at it from a different perspective than what your school personnel would. You know, they want to teach, and we want to. Our job is to keep people safe. It dovetails together, but that's that warrior mindset that I tell you that deputies and law enforcement have, and that's one of the things I'm very, very pleased with our group of deputies that we have, is that they're dedicated, and I don't think that we would ever have that issue here, that if we had an event of our guys
well, and your guys are listening. I mean, and I don't think a lot of people understand how much hearing things, hearing people talk, hearing people say something, that, you know, all you got to do is listen, and you can find out kind of a lot of what's going on.
Let me tell you this. This is a kind of an interesting thing here. Each one of those schools is a mini city when you think about it. And I can tell you, if you want to have a pulse of what's going on in your overall community, go to one of your middle schools or go to that high school, and you have somebody that's in there in the mix that the kids trust. They're gonna talk to that person, and it's an interesting thing being a school resource deputy, as I was in the past. That partnership, or that relationship that you have, we're going to be able to solve burglaries, other crimes, not at the school, but we gather information from these children and from these kids that, you know, they want to keep their community safe. So they're going to say, you know, hey, if you've got that relationship, they're going to share that type of information with you. And it's as one of the old sheriffs told me, you know, a stat that we'll never get is one from a deputy that's patrolling a neighborhood, and just because that car went through that neighborhood, there may have been criminal activity fixing to happen, but they see that, and so they stop their activity. if we've got, you know, people that are concerned that come to us and say, hey, this is going on, well, we may be able to prevent that activity from happening before it happens, you know, just by being there. And it's a partnership with our community that I'm most proud of.
Well, you know, and I'm just thinking here, sitting here talking to you, East Side Elementary School. These kids don't drive cars, but you have Fort White High School and you have Columbia High School. Now you have another challenge. You've got cars that you don't know what's in the car. I mean, so the challenge is even greater at the high schools.
Sure.
And so I mean, and so your deputies there have to be doubly on guard.
Well, you know, and that's part of the overall policing, as we call it, of law enforcement at the school. And you know, and I have to say again, you know, working with the school system, we do unannounced, you know, inspections. When I say inspections of searches, you know, we take the canines out there and we walk the parking lots, because one of the things we want to prevent in our school is drugs. You know, that's just not a place for us to allow drugs, and we should have zero tolerance at the schools when it comes to drug activity. And if someone wants to bring drugs to school, then they need to be held accountable for that. So one of the ways that you deter that is that you have unannounced, you know,
dog visits.
Dog visits, and you know, it's worked out really well. You know, the kids know it; they're used to it, and so if you want to cross that threshold, then you can be held accountable. But I think it deters the drug activity that goes on at the schools, because there are some people that have nefarious, you know, ideas and things that they want to do, and we're going to try to intervene and prevent that.
We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the sheriff about the school resource deputies that are actually here at the college now, which is something that just started here recently. We'll do that when we come back. Don't go away. You're watching Perspective on FGC TV.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to Perspective on FGC TV. It's an honor to have Columbia County Sheriff Mark Hunter on our program today. Sheriff, we've been talking about school safety, and I just wanted to thank you. We have what we call college resource deputies out here. We have two, or actually three deputies, 24 hours on our campus, because it is that important that we have a law enforcement presence. And I tell you what, your guys have really made an impression on all the staff. So kudos to you and your staff for providing some deputies here that have not only fit right in as part of our family, but they've done a really good job. Well,
Mike, I'm going to tell you the overall presence of the deputies makes a difference, and you know, kind of going back to the school, they're not really school resource deputies. They're more of a security role. However, the neat thing about having a deputy contracted with the school here is that they're tied back in to the law enforcement, the local law enforcement. That's an important slice with the school resource deputies, having them at the school. If you have like like if the school decided to go with a private company or something, well, that's another layer that has to be coordinated through, and it takes time to do that when you have an event. If you have a single entity that's handling that, they're on the radio, and that's another thing that, you know, is really good. The county has just now come on with we'll be coming on live with our 800 radio system, the 7800 radio system, which is going to really enhance our abilities to be able to communicate. You know, they're talking with the school system to try to, you know, work those. There's some features there that we would be able to help to enhance our ability to communicate should there be an event, and it'll help us coordinate the response, which is so paramount.
Quickly, the budget because we've got very short time here.
I will tell you this, I am very pleased and proud of the accomplishments we've made with the funding that's been with us. I have been accountable to the people of this county. I've been called kind of a type behind, you know, with the budget, and my guys know that. But we're gonna ask the community to support us and ask the county commission certainly to support us with what we feel is necessary and reasonable to be able to maintain the safety of our community. And I'm not going to ask for any more than that.
Well, Sheriff Hunter, thank you for being on the program. Thank you for watching Perspective. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long.